All right, welcome to the Audit presented by IT Audit Labs. I'm your co-host and producer, Joshua Schmidt. Today we're joined by the usual cast, Nick Mellum and Eric Brown, our managing director at IT Audit Labs. Today we're joined by Dan Schaefer and Adam. Sorry, Adam, what's your last name? It's not on the...
Adam Warner.
Well, great, guys. Thanks again. Maybe you could just give us a little background on yourselves and then how you got to be working with Pi-Hole and where you're at today.
Yeah, it's got to have been 10, 12 years now. Was looking for just things to do on the internet. GitHub was kind of new at the time, and bouncing around and saw a project that was working on DNS, and it was kind of an interesting thing on content blocking. And they were having problems, ironically, getting IPv6 to work. So I think my first pull was introducing IPv6, and here we are 12 years later, and IPv6 is still nowhere to be seen. I've been told for like 20 years that school started, IPv4 is over, you need to do 6. But so we started working on that, and it was just a ragtag little group of people throwing things together. And then Adam joined in very shortly after that. We added in our third, Dominic, who's in Germany, to help out. And then we've had some other people come and go as with open source programs kind of do and volunteer work does. I'm amazed that we're still here this much later and still have such a huge community and a big following. The community is everything for us.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear more about that. You have, what, over 190,000 Reddit followers or?
Something like that, yeah. You'd think I'd have that information just to hand.
I think it's 191 when I was down there earlier.
191K, yeah, just saw that then.
That's awesome.
That's impressive. How about you, Adam? What's the background on you, and how did you get to be working with Dan?
So I first discovered, I didn't discover it, but I found Pi-Hole just on Reddit. I was just browsing down the front page and saw what looked like a fancy dashboard or something, had a look into the post, and I was like, oh, hang on, this looks like an interesting project. I've got a Raspberry Pi that is sitting in a drawer. In fact, at the time, I probably had about 10 Raspberry Pis sitting in the drawer because I had an awful habit of buying them and then putting them in a drawer because I had no real purpose for them. I just thought they looked fancy. So span it up, installed it. And I think at the time, so this was back in 2016, I was using it. And what I noticed was that the whitelisting didn't work, or not very well anyway. It had an issue with it. So rather than complain, I had a look at the code to see how it was working, what could be done to make that work, made it work, submitted a pull request to the project, and here I am today, still after about 10 years.
We were talking just before we started recording, and you had let me know that you just released Pi-Hole version 6, yeah, in February?
Yes, so that was 5 years in the making. One of the things about us being a sort of volunteer-run open source project is we don't have an awful lot of time to work on things. So when we do look at sort of working on major things, it takes us a while, especially to try and sort of synchronize everyone and get everyone in the same place at the same time so that we can actually press a button to release it.
What's the big update in 6?
The web server, for example, so we used to use a third-party web server, Light. Never know how you say it.
Lighty.
Is it just Lighty?
Yeah. Lighty.
So that was a dependency of the project, so the install script would always install that. PHP was a big dependency of the project. In 6 or Pi-Hole 6, we have removed the dependency for PHP and Lighty. So Pi-Hole FDL is its own web server now, and the web interface has been rewritten in Lua pages.
There's some Lua pages, some JavaScript, and that's still, we're kind of looking at maybe doing a better front end on it. So we had the genius of Dom, who does a lot of the C coding, and brought in like Civet Web as a C package to handle the web serving and trying to make it a one binary project.
What is Pi-Hole? Like what does it do for the everyday user?
Essentially, when you go out on the internet, you use your web browser or whatever, you type in what's called a domain name. You want to go to Google, you just type in google.com or whatever site that you want to go to. On the back end, on how computers work, they don't communicate via names and tokens and things like that. They communicate with IP addresses, numeric addresses. So you need something that will convert that name into an IP address, a string of numbers that computers can then use to get you to where you need to go. That's called a domain name service. You send out a request, you say, what is the IP address for Google? And you get back a number. Your computer then understands, okay, to get to this number, I need to go here, 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 and get passed along. What we do is we come along and say, okay, there's this domain out there, Evil Corp. Well, we don't really want you to go to Evil Corp, or the person decides themselves, I don't want to go to Evil Corp because Evil Corp's going to take the information they see from me and do things that I don't want them to do. So we say, when you ask us, what's the address? How do I get to Evil Corp? We say, Evil Corp doesn't exist. You can't get there. And that kind of is a very low level basic. There's a lot of other features and things you can do to make it like nicer and spice it up and change it up. But in essentially, that's what we do. It's called a DNS sinkhole because we take DNS requests and sync them.
And it sounds like these things are pretty easy to set up. When I was, in pre-production here, we were talking about the YouTube video I was watching. It was a short where the guy was talking about he could set this up faster than he can cook a hot dog in the microwave. And he did do it. Are you guys able to speak to, was that a part of the educational process? You wanted to make it easy, or was that just the vision, throughout the project to make it easy for kind of the masses? You didn't have to be technical to use the Pi-Hole.
So, I mean, I think I can probably speak to this in that. So when I first joined the project, I'd never touched Linux, so I'd never done any Bash scripting, anything like that before. I did have some background in sort of C# programming on Windows, but beyond that, I'd never touched it. So actually, I found it pretty simple to install straight away. This is even, going back 10 years when the installer was probably a little bit more basic.
But our installation is a Bash script. And it is, we joke about it. It's the worst Bash script you will ever see in your life. It's 1,000 lines long of Bash script. And originally, the original project founder, considered co-founder, myself and Jacob Salmela, when we did the installation script, there are a lot of comments in there. And the original intent was you could look at the script as somebody who doesn't know what Bash is, doesn't know what any of this is, and read it line for line and see, okay, here's a command line. Here's the explanation of what this command does, how it does it, what applications it uses and runs. And to get back to the food thing, I guess there's a food thing with Pi-Hole because it's Pi-Hole and apparently hot dogs. And we like to say you can run Pi-Hole on a potato. So we had to have this food theme going on with everybody.
Now, I don't know if Nick, you're vegan, right? So would it work with a vegan hot dog?
Yeah, big vegan. Probably not. Big vegan here.
I don't think they'll let you into Texas if you're a vegan.
One of the cool, well, he's originally from Minnesota, though.
Considering the gift box Eric sent me yesterday was full of bacon goods, I think no vegans.
So the cool thing, just to kind of tie together why a everyday user, maybe even a non-technologist, might like Pi-Hole to set up at home is it's really easy to do. There's lots of great videos and great instructions to be able to set it up without a lot of technical expertise. But in some cases, you can get enterprise level security, like security that you would get at work with a device that, costs $50, $60, right? You get a Raspberry Pi and get a SIM card, and you could install Pi-Hole on the Raspberry Pi, plug it into your network, and it's going to filter traffic. And you might say, well, why do I want to filter traffic? And there's a lot of conversation with Pi-Hole about being able to block ads. But even more so than that is the ability to block malicious links, like what you were talking about. You can create that level of security at home. So, I don't know, Adam, Dan, anything you want to talk about related to that?
way a lot of the like Cisco's firewall systems and their DNS systems are extremely similar to Pi-Hole. You're paying for the support, obviously, but lists of domains that you want to block, if you can get a list in what's called hosts format, we can use it. And it's very tailored to customization. You can have a big list of domains you want to block, and there's only 2 or 3 that you want to let through for whatever reasons. Okay, you can allow those. You have some systems where you need to access these domains for work. You can put your laptop into a group and say, okay, assign no domains blocks to any computer in that group. So you're not set to one system managing everything, and everybody has to have the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can do some extremely narrow, fine-grained systems.
I had to create the wife unblock
Acceptance factor, the
rule
laugh.
because I had everything locked down, and we went to watch a show. I was so excited when I first built out the Pi-Hole, and I've got my laptop, and I'm watching all of the blocks, and we went to watch a show. I don't know if it was on Prime or Netflix, but we're even just trying to bring up the Apple TV to get to the show, and it's not working. I'm thinking, this is great, right? I'm blocking a ton of stuff that I don't know, like I didn't know even existed, where it's trying to go out and send my information out to all of these third parties, and I'm just kind of watching it on the screen, and then realizing that it's maybe blocking a little bit too much. I probably downloaded a few too many lists and integrated them. So then I was able to just go in and whitelist some. And then from time to time, I will hear shouting from upstairs, downstairs, and it's like, that thing you got running. And so you're able to easily with Pi-Hole put machines into a group with less or no filtering.
Before we had the groups feature on the Pi-Hole, that was, as much as I hate the stereotype on the subreddit, that was one of the biggest complaints. Was my wife's trying to buy things on Google Shopping, and every time she clicks the sponsored link in Google, she can't get to the shopping. How do I fix this? And the answer always used to be, well, disable it for a bit whilst you want to click the link. So people were kind of coming up with bookmarklets so that they could give it to their spouses or anyone else in their family and say, hey, look, if something's not working, just press this button. It'll disable Pi-Hole for 5 minutes. You can then do what you want, and then it will come back on.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought about even instituting something at home where it's like, well, you got to watch this 5-minute video on security before you unblock it. That didn't go over too well.
So besides blocking all these websites and stopping wives or significant others from purchasing this, that, or the other, I suppose, and I don't use a Pi-Hole, so I'm learning a lot here, but could this also be thought of a way that just streamlines and speeds up your web browsing experience, because it's not going out to get all these curated ads on all these websites? Yeah, I think what I can think of most easy is you're doing a speed test for your internet. You go to one of these websites and it's just like all around where you're going to see how fast your internet is. It's just littered with ads. So it takes a while for that to generate. If this is running, it's not even going out to get those ads. So I would assume across the board, people are seeing, an easier and more quick experience on the web.
It does reduce the amount of traffic you pull, because malvertisements tend to be really heavy with a lot of garbage attached to them. One thing that we kind of an unintended side effect, CDNs, things that are GEO IP based, can get confused. So a lot of the gamers at first were, my latency shot through the roof. Well, yeah, because you're in America and you're not, the GEO IP is not going to be able to work, so it's sending you to a server farm in Germany. There are ways to get around that with some DNS extensions that allow you to at least give a portion of where your IP is located at, so you can get to proper CDN endpoints that are located closer to you. But at the heart of Pi-Hole, it is a full functioning DNS DHCP server. You want to develop and use they call it a split brain DNS or split horizon DNS, where you have IP addresses for your production work, and you want to use the same domain names, but use your local area networks. You can go ahead and set it up and say, when I ask for production domain names, return my local. And you don't have to worry about things like hairpin natting or any of the router tricks. You're actually returning a different IP address depending on where you happen to be located.
Dan, you brought up YouTube a little bit ago, and that's one thing I was thinking about. And funny enough, before we jumped on, I was, searching the internet, looking at all the different pies to Pi-Hole items, and one of the posts I saw was, "Oh, I'm gonna make a Pi-Hole so I can essentially have YouTube Premium for free." And I was thinking to myself, would that actually work? So, maybe take a second. I'm curious on your thoughts. I know you said, I think you dislike this YouTube because of this. Can you elaborate on that?
You want to do the Linus Tech Tips video that shot us in the foot with that one?
Was that what it was? I didn't see that one, but I am familiar with him.
Originally, way back, 4 or 5 years ago.
6 years ago or so, I think.
Yeah, he did one, and he was able to show somehow, and this was back in the days when, yes, you could block some of the video roll from YouTube. This was pre them knowing about how we worked and stuff. Now they bake it directly into the video stream, so there isn't a separate DNS query or a DNS endpoint. You're not going to a CDN anymore like they used to do. Ads were served from a different infrastructure than videos. It's all merged into one flow now. But people still see that video and go, "Oh well, I should be able to block YouTube videos." Like, ads.
I see it right now. Block every online ad with this Pi-Hole or on Raspberry Pi. It's got 4.6 million views, and it was published 5 years ago. Spot on.
Yeah.
I think this is a good time for the disclaimer. So we insert that into the podcast here. Neither.
There he goes again, Nick. There he goes. K2.
Well, we are hosting this on YouTube. I would hate to set off any algorithms to clamp down on our views, but yeah, we don't condone any illegal activity, of course. My question was, do you have a sense of, like, I'm sure you do, and especially Adam running the Reddit, what the community finds to be the most valuable part of this? Is it the ad blocking function, or is it mostly used by people with personal computers, or do you find enterprises using this, or organizations, or is it a mix?
There's probably a pretty healthy mix of people that have just stumbled upon the project because they've seen it. There's a lot of people who are now new to the project because of all of the issues with uBlock Origin in Chrome, which is now no longer working in the new version of Chrome, I think, anyway. So we've got a lot of new users through that. But then you've got the super technical people who I would say probably definitely know a lot more than us, whether they do or not. I think they certainly come to us as though they do. But there's all sorts.
One of the things that you mentioned there, Adam, was how some people are using plugins in their browser to do some of that ad blocking work. And that certainly works. But as you mentioned, uBlock Origin, Chrome, that plugin then with Chrome's recent changes doesn't work. So then how do you deal with that? How do you keep the same functionality? Well, you move it away from the browser and you move it to the network, and the Pi-Hole works at that network level. I suppose it could work locally too, but if you have it on the network, then it's working for all of the machines on the network. And one of the tests that I just personally have found to be pretty cool is a website. I think it's TMZ.com. So, Dan, maybe being more familiar with the Los Angeles area.
Yeah, TMZ. I know Harvey. Yeah.
It stands for the 30-mile zone. I guess that's around Los Angeles, means something out there. No idea. All I know is that site gets it has a ton of ads baked into it. So if you let that page load, and you'll see the counters just go up if you have an ad blocker in the browser. Over 100, I think it'll block on that. Like if you're using Ghostery or something like that. But it's great to see it too on the Pi-Hole. and just go to that site and just watch all of the blocks come up from that site. It's pretty amazing all of the things that they're doing to monetize that site and that experience, and what it looks like when you're looking at that website, filtered versus unfiltered.
Well, also consider, how do you use an ad blocker or a malicious traffic blocker on your home surveillance cameras, on your refrigerator, on your web connected
Light bulbs.
Yeah. I got an air fryer the other day that has an application for it, and it connects to Home Assistant, and it's like, it's an air fryer. Come on. But yeah, so being at the internet, or being at the network level, things that don't have user interfaces, things that you don't see and deal with, they can still benefit. Apple TVs can benefit from it. Smart TVs can benefit from it.
Somebody I know has one of these. It's some sort of electronic litter box, as I hear it. It's called, what is it?
That's you, Eric.
Who could that be?
Eric that has this.
And you can actually monitor the cat's activity in the litter box from an app on the phone, while you're remote. So, to your point, everything is connected.
Huh.
Don't you have one of those, Adam?
I had one of those. The cat did not get on with it, so we.
Cat did not appreciate the litter box surveillance.
He's a hipster. He hates technology.
He's a Luddite cat. That brings me to one of my other questions I had prepared. What are some of the challenges that Pi-Hole faces keeping up with the increasing sophistication of ad delivery mechanisms? I'm assuming that was baked into your latest update in version 6, yeah? And maybe you could kind of shed some light on what some of those might be that we might not think about. We just talked about, like, Roomba and adding that Pi-Hole at the network level to kind of give you some extra protection on the IoT devices. But anything new that you've seen popped up that Pi-Hole has been addressing?
It depends on white hat versus black hat on a few things. Ever since the big thing now is encrypted DNS, DOT, DOH, DOQ. And originally when Firefox started with their experimentations on it, and Apple themselves also, they designed a system in where you could put in, they call it canary domain. And depending on what that canary domain responded, you could turn off DOH in Firefox internally. So you could with Pi-Hole say, anybody on my network, they need to stick with plain unencrypted DNS. Where you get into some difficulty is for the bad actors that give you an Android app that is intentionally hard-coded and bypass all of that and go through. That gets into where you do need some pretty heavy-duty firepower to be able to do it. But even your home firewalls can't do it, because you need to be able to break those encrypted packets to see what the payload is. So as long as people play by the generally accepted rules, and I think that's going to happen because you have enterprises. Enterprises are going to need to figure out how to prevent exfiltration through systems where they have their internal DNS, and you need to use our Active Directory systems, our structures. Then how do they protect themselves? And luckily, the way that they protect themselves can be scaled down to home use also. These agreements, these policies and procedures that are being codified do not need heavy lifting technology to be able to use them. We have version 6.1 coming out that we want to get it out within probably this weekend, maybe, that has some updates where these specific requests from Apple, SVCB requests, where we can return, either say these services do not exist, don't go looking for them, or these services exist and here are how you can connect to the Pi-Hole to use these services instead.
I was wondering if Eric could speak to, using this type of technology within organizations or helping others shore up their security posture.
I think it's great in organizations that maybe can't afford the enterprise level firewalls that are going to be able to do that man in the middle where they're breaking encryption and inspecting and then re-encrypting and sending the traffic on, which is what you need to do in order to look at encrypted packets that might be coming from an infected endpoint where the threat actor put a protocol in place in order to protect that traffic. Smaller organizations and home entities aren't going to, as Dan said, break that encryption, look at it, and send it on. But something like a Pi-Hole or a way to bring in lists, host lists into their firewall or whatever's providing their DNS services is really a great thing, because you could, like we were talking about earlier, this is really enterprise grade technology that is at fractions of the cost. So you could bring it in and plug it into a network, and it doesn't consume much resources at all. And a really big shout out to the Pi-Hole community, because there are some people out there that are curating and generating lists that we all then consume and use. And the lists are up to date. I think some of them are updated daily, if not more frequently, with really new and emerging malicious sites. And we can consume that, and then we're just as safe as an enterprise organization.
That was going to be my follow-up with that. I was going to say, Adam, maybe you could speak to just the value of the community and how those people have been generating those lists, and how you integrate that information into what you and Dan are working on.
Every block list that's out there is community maintained. We don't have an opinion. So as the software itself, we don't care what you're blocking. You can block as much or as little as you like. It's up to you how you use it. So when we initially install, just to make sure it works and just to sort of lower the barrier to entry, we have one suggested list, which we found works quite well, doesn't block too much, doesn't break a lot, and that's just there to get sort of people started. But there are, certainly on Reddit, there's a guy, forget his name, Wally3K, who maintains a list of lists. So not just his own lists that he puts together, but he also, I think he goes through and kind of optimizes a few other people's lists. Firebog.net, I believe, is where he keeps those.
Firebog.
And then you've got, there are so many people out there that are just coming up with the different things.
One list to rule them all, it sounds like.
Well, sometimes more isn't necessarily better. So, Adam, Dan, I don't know, how big are your lists that you run on your home environments?
So I'm not super fussy at home. I'm still running just the default block list. So I've got currently about 130,000 domains on my block list. You see people on Reddit, it's almost a competition at some point. So people will come in with like 15 million domains, and you think you're not visiting, or you're not hitting that many domains, surely. But people, you can do it, so they do.
But their wives might be visiting all those.
Is there a list with Joanne Fabrics included on there?
Aren't they out of business?
Yeah, I was going to say Joanne's closing.
Sort of talking of block lists, I've even seen, and I think Dan, you used to do this as well. I've seen it in the complete other way around, where people have no block lists, and they have a single domain on their block, or a single entry on their block list, which is just .dot, and that blocks everything by default. And then they won't look at it the other way around. They start whitelisting things. So they actually end up with bigger whitelists than a block list. It's, I imagine, a pain in the ass to manage and to keep up with, because there are just so many domains out there. But it's another thing that we've seen people do.
Yeah, it's a default deny, and then only specifically allow certain minors that you want. If you're streaming video, that is not the way to go, because you're going more allow this, no, and then allow this, now allow, yeah.
You could do that almost as a time base, right? Like if it's time for the kids to go to bed, and you're like, all right, shut the electronics down. They don't want to do it. And you're like, all right, boom, 10 p.m. shut down.
People do cron job based or chronologically based for not even just complete shutdowns, but just for I want to cut my addiction to social media, so I'm going to give myself these 5-minute blocks where I can access it, but most of the time not be able to access it. And then you have some external things saying, no, don't do it. Reminders. Yeah.
Have you guys seen this new product called a brick, I think it's called, where it makes you physically get up and unlock, an app? You can program it to unlock a specific app by, Bluetoothing it to your phone for a specific amount of time. So you can only hit Instagram if you go up to the brick, unlock it.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
For just kind of what you're but sounds like you can do that with Pi-Hole.
Originally, we wanted to be able to provide this tool and then say, hey, do with it as you want, extend it as you want, add in features as you want. And we're getting to that point where you can programmatically access things. I never use the web interface. Once it's set up, and I don't really need to go through and tweak it. Took a while to get to that point, but yeah, now it kind of just runs on its own.
That's a perfect segue. I was going to ask Adam if you've seen any interesting or unexpected use cases for the Pi-Hole that go beyond, the ad blocking function.
Not really that go beyond the ad blocking function, but certainly in terms of just integration to other systems. So again, as Dan mentioned with V6, we've got this new shiny RESTful API, which is much more advanced than the old API in our V5 version. And with that, people, I think there's a guy who's made an Android. There's an Android app. There's an iPhone app. These are all community made. That effectively mimic the web interface, allow you to manage it on the go. I've seen integrations into Home Assistant. I think you've got people in their sort of automations actually setting up a trigger to disable Pi-Hole or enable Pi-Hole in certain things based on not just time, but whether or not the light in their hallway's on, that sort of thing.
Yeah, the Staples Easy button when you want to stop the blocking.
I've got one on my desk actually.
Where do you see the future going? How is AI dictating how Pi-Hole's evolving? Anything you guys want to speak to on that?
The future, Nick, to some extent, is all of the technology that is built into appliances these days. I think just about every appliance that you could put in your home has some form of connectivity capabilities: washers, dryers, refrigerators, rice makers, right? Toasters, I think Dan said, your car, everything is connected. And that kind of gets into the IPv6, where everything potentially could be on the internet. And if you're not taking some level of caution, you're just pretty much exposed. So a project like this is really awesome. It puts some of the control back in the consumer's hands that may not want to just plug that refrigerator in, and then the next thing you know, it's dumping out the contents of whatever is in there to who knows where that's going.
I mean, the simple solution to that is you just don't connect your fridge to the internet.
And it might be one of these days that in order to warranty the thing, it's got to be internet connected, right? Like they're going to put checks and balances in place, unfortunately, and I hope it doesn't go there for a while, but that is certainly a possibility.
Yes. And so on that note, Adam, can you think of any how do you see yourself in this ecosystem of the community on Reddit? Do you see yourself more as like a firefighter, a police officer, park ranger? I mean, it's a lot of people to manage, and seems like a big job.
When we first started, certainly when I first got involved 10 years ago, I was on Reddit every day, every sort of hour of free time outside of work. I would be read every thread, read every comment. That got very tiring very quickly. In sort of recent years, I've had less time to be able to commit to that for work reasons. But I mean, we've got some super moderators out there. JFB, John is a good one. He is like that. He's in every thread. He reads every message, not just on Reddit, but on our discourse forum as well. I don't know where he finds the time. I assume he's got a lot of it. Or maybe I've never met him actually. He could be AI. There are a lot of people out there who are very into Pi-Hole, and are happily giving back to us, to the community, sharing their own projects. One of our biggest requested features in all time has been high availability of having 2 Pi-holes on your network for redundancy and being able to synchronize those 2 Pi-holes. That's not something we've ever quite got round to doing. However, there are at least 6 that I can think of off the top of my head, projects out in the community where people have taken it upon themselves to create a project that will approximate that and actually keep several Pi-holes in sync. There's been a few popular videos doing the rounds recently since we relaunched V6 of how to set up 3 Pi-holes for redundancy on an LXC stack, plus having these synchronizes to keep everything, like the block lists and everything, the same. So the community, for that purpose, it's brilliant.
The best of all worlds kind of combined. Free software, an amazing community. People are joining together to help other people out. It's good to have some positivity, especially in the world in general, but in cybersecurity, we're often hear a lot about a lot of the bad things that are happening. So it's really cool to hear how people are banding together and creating a positive impact.
The people who are sort of enthusiastically negative as well. But
I'm sure. So if someone like me who doesn't know a lot about tech really piqued my interest on this conversation, where should they go to get started, and how should they get started with integrating a Pi-hole into their security posture?
Probably the best way is our website, pi-hole.net. It's pi-hole.net. I think it's still pretty much a version 5. You'll see there. I haven't updated it for version 6, but there's links there to our GitHub at the top, to the community for our discourse. Best place to get a hold of us is through that discourse, which is discourse.pi-hole.net. And yeah, any questions, anything you need, come find us there. We're happy to talk to you and get things set up for you.
Excellent. Well, great work, everything you've been up to. And on behalf of the cybersecurity community, we commend you for your time and that you put into this and helping people shore up their security. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
If I may speak for them on this podcast.
You can. Yeah, congratulations, guys, on what you've built and especially the community. I think that's huge for me, especially in this space, seeing a community of almost 200,000 people like-minded that are helping everybody else. Kudos to you guys for curating and building that.
Yeah, I mean it's a team effort at the end of the day. It's not just myself and Dan that are on the core team. We've got Dom over in Germany, RD down in Brazil, Ubi again over in Germany. So we've got sort of there's a few of us in the sort of core team, and then there's probably contributors that I don't know where they are, but they're regular enough.
Well, if they would like to join us on an upcoming episode, we'd be happy to host them and hear what they've been working on and have another Pi-hole conversation and get their take from different parts of the world. It definitely is of interest to us. So please extend our invitation and our kudos to them as well.
Will do. Sounds good.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, gents, for your time today. You've been listening to The Audit presented by IT Audit Labs. My name is Joshua Schmidt, co-host and producer. Been joined by Nick Mellum and Eric Brown. And today our guests were Dan Schaefer and Adam Warner from Pi-hole. So thanks again. And we publish every other week on Monday. And you can catch us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts. And we have video on Spotify now as well. So like and subscribe, and we'll catch you soon.
You have been listening to The Audit, presented by IT Audit Labs. We are experts at assessing risk and compliance while providing administrative and technical controls to improve our clients' data security. Our threat assessments find the soft spots before the bad guys do, identifying likelihood and impact, while our security control assessments rank the level of maturity relative to the size of your organization. Thanks to our devoted listeners and followers, as well as our producer, Joshua J. Schmidt, and our audio-video editor, Cameron Hill. You can stay up to date on the latest cybersecurity topics by giving us a like and a follow on our socials and subscribing to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you source your security content.